Hey everybody, a little bit of a delay, but we are here, and I am now going to get, without further ado, because I'm late, my longtime friend and NFL draft expert, Ric Serritella of NFLDraftBible.com. NFL Draft Bible. So, when you are running your own kind of show there, you've got to make sure everything is in working order. Welcome to Zenny62 Live, and now we're going to get Mr. Serritella and turn on the camera, and we're going to talk NFL Combine and NFL Draft. That ring you hear is Skype calling Ric Serritella. And, hey, how are you?
What's going on, man?
I apologize for being late, and
No worries,
yeah. But I got my camera going, got the live stream going, ready for you. And all I need to do is see your face, if I can. Or I can get your voice, whichever.
No, can you see? Are you not seeing me?
No, I can't see you. Hold on a second. I got...
Hold on. It's probably my end.
Okay. Now I can see you. Hey, there he is. I've got him. So now I can... What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the watch page so that I can get the responses from our YouTube chat audience as they come in. And we already got one person says, I thought this is going to be another Grammys. Ha ha ha. No, Paul, you're late by a few days. Sorry about that. But this is Rick. How's it going?
Oh man, it's going great.
How's your coffee? You got your coffee with you? Is that coffee you got with you?
Cup of inspiration, baby.
Smart man. Smarter than me. I had my coffee beforehand. So, let's see here. We've got NFL. There's Rick. Click on that. And move over here. View on watch page. The stream status is okay. I'll deal with that. And we got the live chat there. I don't need to see my face, but I need to see Rick's. So there's Rick. And all I have to do now is move that over with the chat. And there. Okay. I wonder if I can enlarge this. That's interesting. I cannot. That's okay. I got this, though. All right. Now, folks, welcome. And I'm going to do the famous flip screen. Now, one thing I love about YouTube live stream is I can flip it around like that. Voila. There he is. Mr. Serritella, how you doing, man?
Doing wonderful, Zenny. Great to be here.
Excellent.
Looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is really exciting. Hey, Rick, tell my viewers about how you got started covering the NFL draft and about NFLDraftBible.com.
Yeah, well, it all started in 2002. First job out of school was with the Yankees Entertainment Sports Network. They needed a draft analyst, and so the NFL Draft Bible was born on the YesNetwork.com back in 2002. The following year, I turned it into a publication, Zenny, as you know, and as time evolved and technology evolved and people stopped buying books and everything went the way of online media, we converted it into a multimedia platform network at the NFLDraftBible.com or across the social media platforms, and we're bringing out a new product, actually, the NFL Draft Bible Prospectus, soon coming out for all the 2018 NFL Draft, while everyone's getting into the 2017 NFL Draft right now. At the NFL Draft Bible, believe it or not, we've kind of turned the page and have already begun the 2018 scouting process.
Wow. See, Rick has made this. One thing I admire about you, Rick, is that you grind, man. You're focused, you grind, you make this a lot of fun. You do it with a smile, too, you know? And
this is what we do, man. It's all about finding an obsession and making it your profession. That was some advice from my late brother, God bless him, and just trying to heed to it.
I like that, finding an obsession and making it a profession.
You'll never work a day in your life.
That's right. Hey, tell my viewers how the NFL draft started for you. You've been involved. How long have you been doing this? Like 2005?
15 years.
15 years.
15 years.
Yeah. How, over this time, how has the NFL draft changed from your perspective?
Wow. I feel like we are currently living in the boom era, like where fantasy football was maybe about a decade or 12 years ago when fantasy football was kind of peaking.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're living in that era right now, and they've taken the draft from. I remember hanging out with you
Yep.
all day on Saturday and Sunday. We
Yep.
used to come into the draft. We could sit wherever we want, and kind of like the bleacher creatures at Yankee Stadium. We had a good thing going. Then the Yankees started winning World Series, and it was assigned seating. And as the NFL draft has grown, it's become big business. We've seen them push the media back, push the fans forward, and it's become a spectacle, a primetime event, a 3-day fiasco, an extravaganza bonanza. And I think it went from really a couple rows of media at the NFL draft back. When I started covering it, it was at the theater at
Mm-hmm.
Madison Square Garden before it went to the Javits Center, then Radio City, then Chicago, and now Philadelphia. And now you have hundreds at the Combine last year. There was over 1,100 credentialized media, and I think
Wow.
there's going to be another record number this year because they're moving the media to the convention center. So a little bit of a twist in this year's NFL Scouting Combine. I'm kind of interested to see what they do with us media, because every time that there are changes, whether it be the draft or the combine, it usually means it's going to be more fan friendly and less media friendly.
Hey, you said 1,100 credentialized media. My God, that's enormous. Is that mostly college students that follow each, student from the each college player or something like that? That maybe then you don't see them at the draft level or something.
Well, I think when they combine that number, I think they combine the credentials that are issued to the players and the coaches, and you have your local beat writers. So the Giants and Jets, they might have 5 or 6 reporters covering the team at the draft, and a lot of times at the combine, believe it or not, people are there for specific players, local stories. Same thing with the NFL draft. By day 3, they get their story done, especially with the NFL draft. They get their first round pick story filed and they fly home. But man, it's going to be very, very exciting. And you never know what kind of weather you're going to get out there in Indianapolis. But I do love the intimacy of it. The NFL comes to town, they take over, everything's in walking distance. The city does a great job. I hope they never move it, but their contract is until 2020, which I believe will then move to the new LA stadium, and that was part of the Stan Kroenke agreement when he moved the Rams to LA, that the NFL would have this complex where the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl may move. I believe the NFL Scouting Combine will move. It will be an NFL Disney World, so to speak, where the NFL will have a rent-free venue and location to do things such as the NFL Scouting Combine. I think we'll see that in 2020.
Hey, so tell my viewers also the different how over your time the whole deal has grown. In other words, what I mean in terms of the combine and the draft.
Well, I think it started with Mike Mamula. He was the first guy that really put the importance and emphasize the value of what the NFL Scouting Combine can do for your career. Here's a defensive tackle from Boston College, really under the radar. He was the first guy, Zen, the NFL draft prep, the NFL Combine training industry has really exploded. And I think when I first started covering the draft, there was maybe a handful of facilities across the country. Now there's a handful of facilities within driving distance. There's probably over 100 NFL combine training type of facilities. And I think when Mamula did that and he came into Indianapolis and he just blew up the combine, nobody had ever seen numbers like this across the board, because he was the first guy to really train specifically for these measurables type of combine drills. And I think with that, you saw the first draft riser up the board because of his combine performance. He became a first round pick. I think that's when the fascination with the NFL Scouting Combine began.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 10 years ago, maybe 2005, they began to televise it on the NFL Network, which was a huge breakthrough. And I remember my friends, wives and lady friends of ours saying, like, what the hell are you watching? What are you doing?
Hey, Rick, I just want to take 1 second and I want to welcome my viewers, Jack Bauer 24, Hugo Master, John Marks, how you doing? Paul Dog has questions. Everybody, want to get to your questions. Everybody say hi to my buddy Ric Serritella of NFL Draft Bible. And you can, if you go to YouTube, Zenny62, the chat is there. Zenny62.com is the live stream on the upper left-hand corner. And Paul Dog is saying, hey, Rick. John Marks is saying, hey, Rick. And Jack Bauer says, hey, what up, Rick? So this is my denizens. Hey, also, guys, don't forget to buy the Zenny62 t-shirt. Support Code of Support. Support our troops when they come home, our members and their families, and veterans. Code of Support. 10% of your purchase of the Zenny62 t-shirt goes to my favorite charity, Code of Support. Rick, let's talk draft because these guys they've got tons of questions. They're flying by me real quick.
I don't care about my life.
I do. But hey, so let's get right to it. Who's the best player in the draft?
I mean, Myles Garrett, Texas A&M, really, I think is the consensus top pick.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, I gotta hold on. Wait a minute. I guess I gotta say it, dude. Okay, here's why I say it like that. Okay, because all right, I watched some film of Myles Garrett and Mr. Robinson, Cam Robinson, off left tackle out of Alabama. Whoa, he manhandled Myles. And he was like a rag doll. And I'm thinking, this is the vaunted Myles Garrett? Really? I'm saying, so how come we're talking about, I gotta ask you, man, how come we're talking about him and we're not talking about Cam Robinson?
Cam Robinson, really, if you look at his body of work and you look at Myles Garrett's body of work, I think when you expand into it, with Cam Robinson, I mean, I feel like he's a little slow-footed. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure he can play that island on the left tackle at the next level. I think he's more of a right tackle. Mm-hmm. And, maybe Cam got the best of him that game, but I think when you take a look at Myles Garrett's body of work, his resume, his film, and you see the most complete player, and I think a guy that step in and play from day one. And I think Cam Robinson can play from day one too, maybe at the right tackle position. But I think when you take a look at what's important in the NFL, obviously now with the passing attack, cornerbacks have had this tremendous value. But I think you could state an argument that after the quarterback position, defensive end / somebody who can get after the quarterback is really, if you don't have that, you don't have a championship caliber football team. And I think I've seen that with so many teams that have gotten so close, they just lacked the pass rush. And, while you look at Myles Garrett tape, you don't see a Jadeveon Clowney type of prospect coming out of college, that type of dominance and explosion. But the complete package is there. I think, when you want to make the safe pick, I guess, would be Myles Garrett.
Now, I gotta ask you, because I defer to you, you're the man, okay? But the only reason I reacted that way is because you just happened to mention the one guy I was like, no way, dude. So
it's all good, man. But you know what? That's the beauty of the draft process, though. And that's why guys like me can stay in business, because if there was a telltale, scientific way or a way to evaluate players, that guy would be a billionaire a billion times over. And I think, people don't realize like 300 is a good batting average in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a very good average with your draft picks. If you have 7 picks and you hit on 2 of them, that's about what the percentage in the NFL is these days.
Let me satisfy John Mark's question. John asks, he says the Raiders need a defensive pass rusher. Is Myles Garrett good enough to where you think the Raiders should trade up to try to get after him?
Well, they do have Bruce Irvin. They do have Khalil Mack, 2 guys that can get after the quarterback a little bit. So, I don't think a guy like Myles Garrett is going to be available to Oakland at 24, and I don't think they have the ammunition to trade up. However, the pass rush is not what concerns me right now about Oakland. I would pretty much, for me, it would be defense, 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 and it would be in this order, probably cornerback, and then I would solidify the middle with the defensive tackle and the middle linebacker area, strengthen that middle, and when you strengthen that middle, you will see the pass rush improve, and guys like Mack and Bruce Irvin will have more ability to get one-on-one coverage. If you draft a guy like a Montravius Adams in the 2nd or 3rd round, now he needs some space in the middle, take on some double teams, let these guys get loose a little bit. And same thing with the middle linebacker position. I feel like they're lacking that quarterback, that playmaker on the defensive side that can kind of come in and own the defense. I love Ben Heaney to death. He was one of my under-the-radar guys coming out of Kansas. I think he went undrafted. I had him as a starter, and he did start a handful of games last year for the Raiders, and I love what he brings to the table. But if they can get a guy like a Raekwon McMillan in the 3rd round, maybe a Gerard Davis in the 2nd round slides because of the injury. You want to go Zach Cunningham in the 1st, that could be a possibility too. But, I just did my first mock draft on NFLDraftBible.com. I have them taking Sidney Jones, the cornerback out of Washington.
Hey, you know what? Jack Bauer 24. You took the words right out of my mouth, because Jack Bauer 24 asked, he said, should the Raiders gamble on a young corner in the 1st round? And can you tell him about your pick? Tell Jack Bauer and the others about your pick.
Well, it was an interesting mock draft. I only had one quarterback in there, Zen, which I do believe there'll probably be 2 or 3 in the 1st round. But this was my first mock draft, just revving up the engine. And I had 8 cornerbacks in the 1st round. Now, I do think there will be 6 or 7. When you throw in the safety position, I believe a 3rd of the 1st round picks will be from the secondary. That's how strong the secondary position is.
Wow.
So, with the Raiders, I had them taking Sidney Jones out of Washington. Tall, lanky corner. DJ Hayden's a free agent. They're going to probably let him go. They have some couple capable guys there, but no depth. And here's what I looked at with the Raiders. They allowed a league worst 13 yards per completion.
Yep.
That's atrocious.
Yes.
That's really horrible.
Yep.
So they need not one, but at least 2 corners in this year's draft. It wouldn't surprise me if they take 3. And if they have 7 picks, I'm thinking 5 of them are on defense. Maybe it's a deep tight end class, so maybe on offense, that might be the one position. I like Michael Rivera. I like Clive Walford. I think one of them was in a motorcycle accident last year, so is on the mend a little bit. But they might be able to improve that tight end position in the mid to late rounds. But the defense, solidifying the secondary, and also up the middle against the run, they allowed over 4.5 yards per rush, I believe, last year too. So they got to shore up that run. They got to shore up that defense. And I believe that if you want to impact cornerback, you have to act on it in the 1st round, because the top guys will be gone off the board by time round 2 rolls around. I think they're picking 56th overall in the 2nd round, something like that. All the starting cornerbacks, most of them will be gone. You might be able to find a good nickel or corner, slot cover corner there.
Hey, 2 things. John Mark says Sidney is the bomb, go Huskies. So he likes the pick. Now, if Sidney is not there, Paul Dog wants a defensive tackle. You have a defensive tackle for the Raiders out that you can recommend?
Well, A lot of guys like this man more as probably a 34 defensive end, but I had a chance to scout Malik McDowell in person for
Ah,
Michigan State, and he flashes, and he could play up. And against that game in Maryland that I saw him, they moved him up and down that defensive line. He played inside, he played outside, so he could be a kind of little bit of a moving piece. But I think when you talk about upside at defensive tackle, Malik McDowell, talent wise, could be a top 5 player in this year's draft. The problem is the inconsistency.
why do you
Taking
think?
too many plays off, playing when he wants to. And he's a guy, quite honestly, heading into Indianapolis. What he tests at the combine could dictate whether or not he goes in the top half of the first round or the back half of the first round. Some people see him in the second round. I just think he's too talented, but that would be my guy. If I were to target a defensive tackle in the first round, Malik McDowell out of Michigan State. The guy just has rare athleticism. For his size, he's just lean, explosive first step. I like it. I like what he brings to the table. Malik McDowell would be the guy.
Now, John Marks wants to know. He says, "Who's Rick's pick at quarterback?"
It's a great question. I guess it's Mitch Trubisky right now. I did have a chance to evaluate the quarterbacks at the combine last year, and I, like the rest of the NFL, was 1,000% wrong on Dak Prescott. So, so the quarterback position is a tough evaluation more and more with the type of offenses being played at the collegiate level. Now, the thing with Trubisky,
I have to say one thing. I had Dak as my number 6 because I have a different ranking system, and it's interesting. But
which probably put him right in about where he went in the middle.
Yeah, it did. Hey, you were going to say something. Let me interrupt you there. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So Trubisky reminds me in a way, maybe not so much his style of play, but the situation he's in, similar to what Mark Sanchez was coming out of USC, where you have this one-year starter, not a whole lot of experience, not a big body of work, and
he's not gonna butt fumble though, is he?
No.
Okay,
he's not Mark Sanchez. Maybe not the style of play, but the situation where you take a look at this prospect and you say, he'd probably be a better prospect coming out next year if he stayed in school for another year. But then you say, well, the draft class for the quarterbacks next year is stacked, so I think he did the right decision by coming out this year. Kind of what Sanchez did was a weak quarterback class. He pounced on opportunity when he saw it, and he wound up going very high. The Jets traded up for him. And I do believe that somebody, if they're not interested in the top 3 for Mitch Trubisky, I do believe somebody will trade up and nab him. Now, everybody's waiting on pins and needles to see what he measures at the combine, because they're saying he could come in that 6'1" range. And 6'1", as you know, Zenny, at quarterback for the NFL level, a lot of teams going to cross him right off the board.
That's what happened with the great Mr. Adams, Vernon Adams. Remember, came out, measured at what, 5'9", barely. The 5'11" is like 5'10", really short.
Yeah, in that range.
Yeah, and then if memory serves, he was picked up as an undrafted free agent by the Seahawks, who were looking for a Russell Wilson clone. And unfortunately for Vernon, they found the great guy from TCU.
Travoy.
That's right. Yeah. Mr. Boykin. And Boykin boyked, he didn't boyk him, but, Hey, so the other question I have here is, and I don't understand Paul Dog's question. He said, how much your picks depending on free agency. So I'll go to Aeroplane Blues. Aeroplane Blues has the question, what's the linebacker possibility for the Raiders in the draft rounds 1 through 3?
Well, I think the guy that I love, that nobody's talking about right now, who I think will shock everybody. I think he'll be a top 12, maybe top 16 selection. I look around at a few mocks. I don't dive into him too heavily, but nobody has this guy in the first round. I don't know why. He dominated at the Senior Bowl. He's going to have one of the most impressive, if not the most impressive, performance at the NFL Scouting Combine next week. I've been on this man. I asked Tyler Matakevich 3 years ago, who's that number 58? This past season, he wore number 7. If you follow the Temple football program, you know about the single digits. Hassan Reddick. This guy, holy cow. Hey, he played defensive end in college. He comes to the Senior Bowl. He plays with his hand in the dirt. They say, hey, let me see you stand up, pass it, or cover some running backs, get after the quarterback at outside linebacker. He does that. They say, hey, you know what? We want to kick you inside. Let me see what you look like inside linebacker. And I think that's where his fit probably is at the next level, at the inside linebacker position. But a guy that can also get after the quarterback. I love Hassan Reddick. I think I could see him going to the Steelers, but if he's at 24 for the Raiders, great fit. I think the other guy there is Zach Cunningham out of Vanderbilt, who some people believe is a top 10, top 5 talent. I know one person, Brian Brodus, down at the DallasCowboys.com, he believes he's the top player in the entire draft. So Zach Cunningham is probably a first-round guy. And then you get into the second round. Again, Gerard Davis out of Florida got a little bit of an injury. People felt he might be a first-round guy. Maybe he slides now into the second round. Third round, you get to that area. Then maybe you're talking Raekwon McMillan out of Ohio State, a guy who could come in, probably compete for a starting job right away. So those are your first, second, and third round options at linebacker.
Hey, so Paul Dog has a question I'm a little confused about, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and I'm going to try to figure out what he's trying to say. It reads, how much does your mock draft depend on free agency? Do you take free agency into consideration? Now, Paul Dog, do you know what he means?
Yeah. So,
okay.
So and this is also why I did not like the NFL pushing the scouting combine back a week this year, because now not only are we bleeding into the pro day circuit, but also it's like, boom, back to back with the NFL free agent frenzy. So like the combine ends and like literally 2 days later, boom, it's the free agent frenzy. I'm driving from Indianapolis right into the Temple Pro Day in Philadelphia. So I'm going I'm leaving the combine on the 7th. I'm driving to Temple Pro Day on the 8th. I'll be in Harvard on the 9th, and then Rutgers on the 10th.
Wow.
So there's no breathing room. And then NFL free agency kicks off, I believe, on March 9th or 10th. So it's really, it's going to be a frenzy, jam-packed time of year. But to answer his question, yes, we do take the pending free agents into consideration when we do a mock draft. We can't go really in depth and examine who we think's going to stay, who we think's going to go, because free agency hasn't kicked off, right? But luckily for Oakland, I don't really see like too many high priority or impact free agents that could be departing, aside from Latavius Murray.
Yeah,
I think he's the one guy that they could lose in free agency. That it would be a loss, but it's also a great year to draft a running back. So, if they do lose Murray and he is seeking too much money, I would let him walk, and I would take a running back in this year's draft. But, if they can find a medium, I see a guy like Lamar Miller and what he fetched on the free agent market last year. I think Latavius Murray probably gets a similar type of contract. I think that might be a little too rich for the Raiders' liking.
Now, I'm just actually doing a little house cleaning because there's some people who are kind of goofing off around here. Anybody who goofs off gets blocked. Sorry, that's just the rule. Okay, now going back to the questions, and I love to block people who do not follow the rules. So if you do not have a question for Rick and you are going to ask about being sub to, you are going to get blocked with glee and joy. I will say that just so you can, see my face as I tell you that. Follow the rules and don't get blocked, okay? Thank you very much. Now back to the Ric Serritella Show. Now, Yugoslav Master has a question. He says, what do you think of the Raiders trading back and going to Tre'Davious or Jarrett Davis? If Davis is picked, we try Jordan Lewis. I think I've got that right.
Well, ideally everybody wants to trade back, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
who doesn't want to trade back in the NFL? You accumulate draft picks, and when you're picking at 24, you know, you go from 24 all the way to 50. Those guys are pretty evenly matched, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the odds of finding a trade partner become less likely unless the one position that teams will trade back up into the end of the first round to grab is the quarterback. So if Deshaun Kaiser is available
Mm-hmm.
or Deshaun Watson is available,
Ah.
team then possibly be interested, say the Browns, who are picking 1 and 12, maybe they want to move their second round pick now back into the first round. They have all that ammunition from the trade down last year. They have plenty of picks to work with. Could the Browns maybe move back into the end of the first round? And they had 3 first round picks.
Ah.
That's an interesting scenario. So, you know, I'm always an advocate of trading back if you can, because I believe that you can find starters in all 7 rounds of the draft if you do your homework.
Right.
So give me more chances at that lottery ticket. Give me as many lottery tickets as I can buy, because you know what? Eventually I'm going to hit. I don't need a first. I don't need a second. Just give me multiple.
Mm-hmm.
That's my philosophy. And honestly, if I worked for an NFL team, I'd say, listen, everybody knows the top 100 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Where NFL teams make their money is the day 3 and undrafted free agents.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a look at the most successful teams around the league, teams like the New England Patriots. I think 44 of the 53 players on that Super Bowl team were homegrown.
Is that right? Wow. Wow.
The Green Bay Packers are another team.
Mm-hmm.
They do everything in-house. They draft, they develop, they identify players who fit their scheme,
mm-hmm.
and they groom and develop so that, yeah, they keep their players in-house, those who are good enough to get the contract extension they reward and pay,
mm-hmm.
and they never go out to the free agency and overpay for players. You never see the Patriots overpay. You never see the Packers overpay in free agency. Jared Cook, $3 million they got him at the end of free agency, was one of the biggest bargains. In fact, the Patriots, just like the linebacker they traded over to Cleveland, who's now the highest paid linebacker in the NFL, you will see the Patriots part ways with the star player 1 year too early rather than 1 year too late. It goes all the way back to Lawyer Malloy, Ty Law. They've been doing it for years, and you would think other teams would follow this formula,
mm-hmm.
but drafting is a hard thing to do. But to answer your question, trade back for Gerard Davis, Tre'Davious White, I got news for you. He might not even be available at 24, so I don't know if you trade him back for Tre'Davious White.
Mm-hmm.
Gerard Davis is definitely a possibility. If you could trade out of the first round,
mm-hmm.
stockpile a couple picks and get a talent like Davis in the second, and get a couple of second-round picks. Maybe you add Davis and Montravius Adams, or Davis and a cornerback. Adoree Jackson is another guy. Maybe he plays the slot,
mm-hmm.
can come and play some special teams, be a number 5 wide receiver. I like what the man can do with the ball in his hands. I think he's a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, some way, you get the ball in Adoree Jackson's hands. I know he's a corner,
mm-hmm.
but I could see that guy playing a little bit of wide receiver at the next level.
Now I got Jack Bauer and Paul Dog have running back questions. Paul Dog wants to know where you think, of course, Christian McCaffrey's going. And then Jack Bauer 24 has a question, if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me, Jack Bauer 24, if I'm wrong, about your top running back pick. Yeah.
So the running back class. What was the first question? I'm sorry. It had a point.
Paul Dog. Okay, the first question by Jack Bauer, he wanted to know who your top running back pick was, and then that was Jack Bauer 24, and then Paul Dog wants to know where you think Christian McCaffrey from running back from Stanford's going to go. Yeah.
So McCaffrey is an interesting case study because I see everybody really high on him in like the first round lock, and I just don't see that because I think it's very similar to what Danny Woodhead translates at the next level, and
Wow,
I see him.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I see him making a very big impact in the receiving game.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at his burst and his speed,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it's going to work in the NFL. I'm not sure
Whoa.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And I'll put it to you like this, Sen.
Sure. Yeah.
So remember Reggie Bush coming out of college?
Yes.
One of the
Ah.
most electric.
Yes.
I mean, have you ever seen film on a running back like Reggie Bush coming out of college? This
No.
guy, maybe one of the most impressive players I ever studied coming out of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've seen how Reggie Bush's career has unfolded. As of late, it's been injury riddled. But take Reggie Bush in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
You using a first round pick on him?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have drafted him that high. Of course, it was between Reggie Bush and remember Mario Williams because I interviewed Bob McNair about that, and Mr. McNair had that $60 million budget.
At Matt Leinart.
Right, and Matt Leinart, who thought he was going to go number 1, went number 10 to Arizona, and you watched the video of the press conference, which is still up at Zenny62 because I was the first YouTube channel to cover it, if you remember that. He was pissed. But I digress.
Oh, yeah.
Point that I'm making is, that year they took Mario Williams because they thought Reggie Bush was going to be a holdout. And then he wound up going to the Saints, and he never really caught on. He was fast, but the trouble is everybody was fast in the NFL too.
So my point here is that, to me, coming out of college, I graded Reggie Bush as a much higher grade than Christian McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm.
So even if McCaffrey's ceiling is Reggie Bush's prime, I'm not sure I invest a first-round pick on that because the next question was, who do you think is the best running back?
Yeah.
And my guy might not be a running back at the next level, but he played running back at Ohio State, Curtis Samuel.
Ah.
And I think he's the guy that nobody's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
He averaged then almost 8 yards per carry for his career.
Wow.
But a lot of people view him, again, much like McCaffrey, as a guy that could potentially be a slot receiver at the next level. If you remember Larry Centers.
Yep, I sure do.
Curtis Samuel could be in that kind of mold. And to me, I think in terms of impact, I love Curtis Samuel. I'm a lot higher on Donta Foreman from Texas than most people are. I had him as my third running back in the first round, along with Fournette and Dalvin Cook. And a lot of people see a plotter. I see a guy like LeGarrette Blount. And if I said, hey, if I can give you LeGarrette Blount, would you use a first-round pick on that guy after watching what he just did with the Patriots, 14 rushing touchdowns, you need a short yardage, you need a goal line carry. I think LeGarrette Blount would be worth a first-round pick, and I think that's what Donta Foreman is. And I'm probably in the minority on that thinking, but that's how I see the running back class. Dalvin Cook, I believe, is probably the best guy, but how's he going to check out medically in Indianapolis? What's the deal with the shoulder? Not only that, there is some off-field issues. He's been in some trouble. Do I have to worry about that? Leonard Fournette, same thing. I had a couple scouts tell me, not too much between the ears.
Really?
But he plays running back, so hey, it's the easiest position
how much do you need,
to
right?
transition from college to the NFL. So those are probably and Alvin Kamara. We must mention him out of Tennessee. More of a slasher, change of pace kind of guy, but some people believe he could be a workhorse at the next level. I see him popping into that first round conversation. But the point is, then, with Latavius Murray's pending free agency, if you do need a running back, this is a great year. It's the comeback of the running back. I think Ezekiel Elliott last year. You will see 3 running backs in the first round. That's
that segues into 2 questions I have regarding Deshaun Jackson. One person wanted to know, should the Bucks try for Deshaun Jackson? John Marks wants to know, should the Raiders try for Deshaun Jackson, who is a Cal product, as you know, and he'd be coming back home?
Well, I think both destinations make a lot of sense, for sure. The Raiders could use that that deep field threat. Tampa Bay, wow, that would be interesting if Vincent Jackson got healthy and Mike Evans, two tree trunk tall receivers, and then you have Deshaun Jackson run the seam and stretch the field. That would be incredible. But here on the East Coast, Zenny, I got to tell you, the talk has intensified with him reuniting with the Philadelphia Eagles. And while I'm on this topic, I haven't announced this yet. I have an email blast going out, and I was going to make an announcement out at Indianapolis, but I'll do it right here on Zenny.
Oh, break the news! Do it!
A little bit of news, huh?
Break the news!
I'm very, very proud to announce, Zenny, that after 15 years in the industry, I finally landed my first newspaper gig. And
Congrats.
I'm joining the ranks of the newspaper, as it is kind of the newspaper's a dying breed. But here I am 15 years into my career joining a newspaper. I'll be writing and contributing to the Metro US.
Congratulations.
Which has 4 million per month circulation in the Boston, New York, and Philadelphia area.
Congratulations.
So I will be covering the Patriots, Jets, Giants, and Eagles for the upcoming NFL draft for Metro, which is why I kind of sort of have my finger on the pulse with these Eagles. I was down there in training camp, and Deuce Staley, you remember him.
Hey, everybody says congrats, by the way. Paul Dog says congrats. Hugo Master says congrats.
Thank you.
John Mark says congrats.
Yes.
I say congrats.
Hey, we're going to have so much great content. But, Deuce Staley, who I know you remember as a player, Zen, this guy is one of the most intense, in my opinion, one of the best up-and-coming younger coaches that I've seen. I was so impressed with Deuce Staley. Not only the way he commands respect on the field, but his leadership, the way he motivates. Doug Peterson has built a great staff in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And don't underestimate that.
No, I'm quite impressed with what Doug Peterson has done with Carson Wentz. I mean, I'm happy to be wrong about Carson Wentz. I was really skeptical as to how well he would do with the league, but Peterson put him in the right system for his talent and knowledge. Quite impressive. I don't have any other questions coming in yet. Peter G, you got a question? Hey, as you guys other watching have questions firing in, I'm going to ask a question regarding the San Francisco 49ers, who have the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. What would you advise new general manager John Lynch to do with that number 2 pick? What did your mock draft say?
Well, the mock draft has them taking Jonathan Allen from Alabama, a defensive line prospect who another one of these guys can play up and down the defensive line, and I think that adding a blue chipper on defense would be a good building block for the 49ers. But the interesting new development that I heard today was a possible trade that might go down at the Combine next week involving, and you saw Kirk Cousins at the Falcons playoff games checking out his old coach Kyle Shanahan.
Right.
A lot of talk there could be a trade done in Indianapolis involving the 49ers and Redskins, where Kirk Cousins would go to the 49ers. And then Washington now, apparently, under the radar, is now inquiring about Tony Romo.
Really?
So that could be a major, major storyline next week.
Yeah.
If there is any truth to this rumor that Kirk Cousins could be going to the 49ers, I would assume that number 2 overall pick might be involved. But I would do that all day. If I can give up a number 2 overall pick for Kirk Cousins, I am like, hello, let's do it like yesterday.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer.
Hey, Airplane Blues has a question. He wants to know who your top 5 draft picks are.
My top 5 draft picks. Well, we talked about Myles Garrett. I do think there's a drop-off between Garrett and Jonathan Allen, but I would have Jonathan Allen in my top 5. Probably also Jamal Adams, the safety out of LSU, which I don't normally put safeties in my top 5, but this guy's a difference maker. And if you remember when there was a high point on safety a few years back when the Steelers were making a run with Palomalu, the Seahawks were making a run with Earl Thomas.
Right.
Even Louis Delmas with the Colts, if you remember when
Yeah,
the
I sure
Colts won
do.
the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
they had Louis
Yep.
Delmas.
Right.
I think Jamal Adams is the kind of safety that fits that mold and can be a difference maker, an impact player. On the offensive side of the ball, I'll go 3 defense because I do think it's a defensive orientated draft. On the offensive side of the ball, it's a down year for offensive linemen. I think overall, when it's all said and done, yeah, a running back, that's probably easy to do. But I like these 2 skill position guys. Mike Williams out of Clemson. I think when you talk about a playmaker, a guy that can come in and be a wide receiver number 1 in this year's draft class, it's Mike Williams. This guy's a stud. I think he's going to be one of the top players in this year's draft when it's all said and done. And O.J. Howard is just a freak.
Absolutely.
I mean, he is on some Rick James freak level. You know, I mean, he is a freak boy, and I find it hard to believe. I actually had O.J. Howard check out this fit, Zen. If anybody can identify an all-pro tight end, who better than the Ravens general manager, Ozzie Newsome?
That's right.
And how about that for a fit? Joe Flacco and the Ravens, they need an offensive weapon there. O.J. Howard, baby, right in.
Hey, 2 questions. First, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master wants to know, Rick, what do you think on Jordan Lewis and where do you think he'll go?
I think he's a top 40 selection. I think he can go late round 1, early round 2, and pleasantly surprised with what he measured in at the Senior Bowl, 5'10". A lot of people thought he was going to be in that 5'9" range, which would kind of limit him to a slot nickel type of role. But I think now he has an opportunity to prove himself on the outside and be, you know, a number 2 corner at the next level. And if that doesn't pan out for him, then, boy, you have a hell of a corner slot.
Yeah. And Paul Dog asks, is there a slot receiver in the draft for the Raiders?
Ryan Switzer out of North Carolina. I mean, this guy runs tremendous routes. You know, I think, quite honestly, he's the best slot receiver in this draft, and he'll probably be available round 3, maybe even day 3.
How would you compare him with Julian Edelman or Wes Welker in his day?
I think he fits the mold exactly of the New England Patriots protocol, right? A white wide receiver who runs routes really well, so he fits the Patriots molds to a T.
He's quick. He's quick like a brother. There we go.
Hey,
we can say that on my show. Hey, so John Marks asks, he says, how about O.J. Howard to the Raiders if he's available?
You know, by me just saying that he's a top 5 player in the draft, taking him at 24, obviously, in my opinion, would be value. But as we discussed earlier in the show, to me, it's defense, defense, defense. I'm not even thinking offense till round 4. But, you know, sometimes when a best player available falls to you, you have to pull the trigger. So if he's somehow remarkably there at 24, wow, yeah, you have to pull the trigger. But I think the Miami tight end Njoku probably is a more realistic tight end option that might be available. I don't see O.J. Howard lasting beyond the top 20 overall picks.
And our Plain Blues asks, does Rick think the Patriots will shop Jimmy Garoppolo?
No. I think they'll shop him. I don't think they'll trade him.
Does that mean, is that the Matt Castle? I call it the Matt Castle syndrome. Remember when Matt Castle was the darling to be traded for because he was a Patriot and then he turned out not to do so well?
Yeah, well, I'll even take it a step further with what Bill Belichick is doing. And I subscribe to the Bill Walsh philosophy. The Bill Walsh philosophy is draft a quarterback every year. I don't care what round it is. Take a quarterback. It's the most valuable position. And, hey, if you have more than one good quarterback, that's a good problem to have. If you remember Joe Montana, Steve Young, Steve Bono, Elvis Gerback. I I mean, these guys were constantly three deep at the quarterback position in San Francisco. If you look
Jeff
at
Kemp.
what Belichick is doing, hey, he took Jacoby Brissett last year in the 4th round.
Yeah.
The year before, he took Garoppolo in the 2nd round.
Mm-hmm.
And, he does have the system in place. Brissett, if you remember, Garoppolo got injured at the beginning of the year, and Brissett played a game or two and did very well. So
yeah, on Monday Night Football, I remember that.
That's right. So
yeah,
is it a possibility? Yes, but in order to pry away Garoppolo from the Patriots, I believe it would cost you at least, at the very minimum, a 1st-round pick this year,
mm-hmm.
a 1st-round pick next year,
mm-hmm.
and at least another 2nd-round pick either this year or next
mm-hmm.
to get that deal done. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a team out there willing to pull that trigger. The Browns have the ammunition to do it. That's where the talk is. Number 12 overall in a package deal for Garoppolo. But I think the Patriots are too smart for that. And, who knows? I think it becomes really what Belichick is thinking is Belichick going to walk away with Brady in 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
If he is, maybe he pounces on the Garoppolo. Talking it out loud, maybe the possibility does exist. But if I was the Patriots and I was building my team for the long term, I have Tom Brady's successor in-house. This is an Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre type of situation. Garoppolo just needs to bide his time. I know he's going to be an impending free agent next year.
Mm-hmm.
But, hey, Brady's 40 years old. If he gets hurt next year, you have his successor right here. You all know how hard it is to find a quarterback.
Yep.
Why start that process all over again?
Hey, speaking of quarterbacks, what do you think of, first of all, Davis Webb out of Cal, my school?
Little disappointed by his Senior Bowl showing. Wanted to see more. Expected him to come in and kind of own the week and be
the man.
Be the best quarterback there. And I thought it was Nate Peterman out of Pittsburgh kind of stole the show from him a little bit. Mm-hmm. And to me, it was kind of disappointing. Obviously, the Jared Goff comparisons are going to be there because they just played in the same offense. Davis Webb put up all these numbers, probably bigger numbers than Jared Goff. But I would rate Goff higher coming out of college. I think Webb, you see the inconsistencies with the accuracy, maybe the deep ball. He has the arm strength, but he's just got to get it there. And I think he's more of a developmental guy. I think all these quarterbacks are developmental prospects, and I think Deshaun Kaiser is probably 2-3 years away from playing. And Davis Webb, hey, if he's more, I would compare him to like a Mike Glennon. A guy that could develop into an NFL starter, but is going to need a couple years to be groomed.
Now, the other question I have has to do with the guy that basically took the place for Davis Webb at Texas Tech, Patrick Mahomes. I mispronounced his last name. He's Lee Steinberg. Yeah, he's Lee Steinberg's client, by the way. Congratulations to Lee.
Is he? Okay, well, Steinberg's been pulling in the quarterbacks. He had Paxton Lynch last year. And, Mahomes is an very interesting projection because if you're a Pat Mahomes fan, you're all the way over here and probably believe that he's the best quarterback in the draft, right? And if you're not a Pat Mahomes fan, you're probably all the way on the other side and say, this guy just has an unorthodox throwing motion,
right?
An unorthodox offensive system. It doesn't translate to the NFL. And I think he's somewhere in between, right? I don't think he's the best. I don't think he's the prototypical air. I don't think we should just label him an air raid quarterback because it's just too easy to do.
Yeah.
I think there are intangibles there to work with. The throwing motion, the hitch, the different arm angles. Does it bother me? Yeah, because it's not traditional. Have we seen quarterbacks get away with that? Brett Favre did it all the time. So can it work? Absolutely. Where would I take him? I don't know if I'm investing a day 1 or day 2 pick on Patrick Mahomes. If he's there in round 4 and he's still on the board, I think that's where I would take him and be willing to work with him, knowing that it's a 2 or 3 year process before he sees the field. I
Now,
honestly believe that. I think that the way the college game has gone, with the air raid, with the spread, with the play calling has gone by the wayside. And we're to the point now where the quarterbacks are just looking over to the sideline.
yeah,
They're holding up cards.
it's ridiculous.
And
No, there are no field
RPO,
generals anymore.
the run pass option is ruining the development of quarterbacks.
Yep, yeah, I quite agree with you. Hey, I want to get to Paul Dogg's question before it goes off the board. Paul Dogg's question is, who is your biggest bust on your own mock draft over the years, and who is your biggest sleeper? I got that right, Paul Dogg?
Wow. Well, that's a tough question. I would say that, the one guy, it didn't actually pan out, but I remember being on the radio, and it drew just what a reaction it drew. We got callers. I got feedback on social media because this was right after the Senior Bowl, actually. And the radio host had told me, give me a player that we don't see coming in the first round that's going to catch everybody off guard. And I said Christian Ponder. And he winded up going very high in the first round.
Number 10, right? Yeah.
And I was right about that, but his career didn't exactly pan out. I think he was with the Raiders at one point last year.
Yeah, he was at the Raiders. He got drafted at first by Minnesota.
Right.
And and in fact, no, Christian Ponder went. I'm sorry, it was number 10. Brenton Gabbert went number 10, and then Christian Ponder went after that. But Ponder wound up having the better start than Gabbert did after a time.
Right.
And then
the other part to your question, I'm looking at the Draft Bible cover, the publication covers over the years hanging on the wall, and it's a tough pill to swallow. He was the golden boy coming out. We put him on the cover of the NFL Draft Bible, and we were in with Quinn, Brady Quinn, as you remember.
Yeah. Brady Quinn versus Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah, well, Jamarcus Russell was not even in our top 50 overall picks that year.
Wow. You say proudly.
I seen that one coming from a mile away.
Wow. Yeah. I still contend, and I know this is a controversial statement, but I'll say it again. I said it then. I'll say it again now. I believe that if he were in the kind of offense that Doug Peterson has Carson Wentz playing, I think Jamarcus would have played at least 6 years. And I think it would have been very effective. But that offense they stuck him in, forget it. I mean, it was awful. All right. Now, my other question is regarding schools, and I'm going to come back to Cal because that's my school. Is there anyone else coming out of UC Berkeley that you like other than Davis Webb? I know you kind of like him lukewarm, but, yeah.
Yeah, Chad Hansen.
Yes.
We haven't spoken about him. And if you want a dark horse candidate for late first round selection, I'll give you one right there, Chad Hansen. I think, no doubt, he's a top 50 player in this year's draft. We have a guy here at the NFL Draft Bible, Justin Gamble, who does great work, and he believes Chad Hansen is one of the best players in this year's draft. I think he has him rated as the number 1 wide receiver in this year's draft. So I think that's a guy that people are sleeping on right now at this point of the process. But as we get closer to the draft, you're going to hear Chad Hansen as a potential first-round selection.
Hey, I got a question. It's 1:08. We're about an hour. Can you go for about maybe 20 more minutes?
Oh, yeah. You know this, man.
Cool. You got it. Just making sure. Yeah, just making sure. I don't want Sam to kill me.
She's asleep.
Oh, okay. She's smart. So, okay, so we got another one. The other question I have is this: let's talk about what do you see as the Raiders' needs? And we've heard from Raider fans, but what do you see as the Raiders' needs?
Well, I think we hit on it up the middle, defensive tackle, linebacker for certain. I'd like to see them add at least 2 corners in the draft or free agency, maybe 3. And I would go, very defensive orientated. I think the nucleus on offense, whether or not Murray comes back, but you have Carr, you have Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
you have Crabtree.
Mm-hmm.
That was good enough for the sixth most explosive offense in the NFL last year.
Right.
So let's build inside out. If we're going to add any pieces on the offense, let's add them on the line.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to build up the defense, let's build from the inside out. Let's get a defensive tackle and enable our edge guys, Irvin and Mack. Let's get them some help.
Mm-hmm.
But the tight end position, again, I believe that there's a guy at Virginia Tech by the name of Bucky Hodges.
Yes.
There's another guy at Arkansas, Jeremy Sprinkle,
Mm-hmm.
who has a little bit of off the field going on.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Leggett from Clemson.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
One of
Yes.
these guys, maybe more than one, is going to slide because
Mm-hmm.
it's a very deep tight end class. You have Evan Ingram, you have O.J. Howard, you have David Njoku. It's a really Jake Butt is another guy who's injured, but Jake Butt actually had the highest spring grade amongst NFL teams.
Hey, so I got a question here. Tack Flez says Henson over Mike Williams and Corey Davis. Please explain. Laugh out loud.
Well, again, that's our guy Justin Gamble. You can hit him up on Gam Scout, Gam Scout, and he'll answer that question because that's his selection. If he was tuned in earlier to the show, he knows Mike Williams is my guy.
Mm-hmm.
Corey Davis, I like what he brings to the table. Big, physical type of guy that now with the injury, are we going to see, what he gets to run? We're not going to see it at the combine. So hopefully he gets a chance to run at his pro day. But as you saw with Laquan Treadwell a year ago, a 40-yard dash could kind of be a big deal with the wide receiver. So whether or not he runs a 40, I think will dictate where he's drafted. Regardless of what he runs, where he's drafted, I love what Corey Davis brings to the table, and I think he'll have a very successful career at the next level.
Now, I'm curious to know what you think of. There's the Florida State defensive tackle number 44. Sometimes he plays defensive tackle. Sometimes he plays in. He's a terror. I believe he had 4 sacks against Clemson. Dwayne, what's his last name?
DeMarcus Walker?
Yes, DeMarcus Walker. Yeah. Where is he going?
He's been a guy on the slide, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, I had him in my first round mix.
Mm-hmm.
And as the season has gone on, and really, it's been weird because as the season has ended and the draft process has ramped up, the more people study his film, they feel like there's some flaws coming out on the film there, and maybe not as high of a motor as people thought. Now, here's a guy who, if he came out last year, a lot of people thought he was a consensus first-round pick. I was in that majority.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought that he enhanced his game by returning to school. I thought he polished up some things overall.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a first-round guy right now? I think he's on the outside looking in. I do think he's in that early second-round consideration, but not as high as I expect him to be. And he's now a guy officially on my list that I need to go back, circle back to and break down some more film and say, what are people saying? Is it true? Is it not true? Because the NFL draft evaluation process, I try not to read other websites because it's such a copycat.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
Copycat league, and there's certain guys out there that I respect that come from a scouting background, and I'll take their advice. But I like to go back, circle back, and do my due diligence. And DeMarcus Walker's a guy that I'm gonna have to just really dig into him a little bit more and come up with my consensus. Dwayne Smoot from Illinois is another guy that kind of fits in that same criteria where some people thought he was a first-round pick. The inconsistency now with Smoot and maybe some flaws exposed at the Senior Bowl have him sliding now into the late second, even early round 3 range for Smoot.
Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master has a question that I unintentionally missed. Sorry about that. The question is, does Quan leave the Panthers? If he does, do the Raiders go after him or Campbell?
Who is this now?
Now that's who. Hey, Hugo Master, can you explain that a bit more? Because he was talking about the Carolina Panthers, and he says, "Oh, thanks. Yeah, can you flesh that out a bit more for us?" And while you're doing that, Hugo, I'm going to ask another question of Rick. First of all, we've got Ric Serritella here of NFLDraftBible.com. 15 years NFL draft veteran, my buddy. Great to eat deep dish pizza with. His girlfriend's trying to marry me off. She's wonderful. So, and while you're doing that, what I'm gonna do really quick is go over here. I'm gonna tweet this out to promote this again and put the hashtag of the NFL Combine next to this one right here to make sure that we're getting an audience here. Late night with Ric Serritella audience, as I like to call it. Kind of like late night with Stephen Colbert or David Letterman, you know. And there's the... they're not giving me the hashtag there. Hold on a second. There it is that. Let me try something there. Get rid of that. Back a bit. And put that there. And let's see if it gives me the hashtag. For some reason, it wasn't giving me the hashtag. Oh, I see. That's why I got it. All right. And we're off. And now we're back to Rick. And we go over to Skype, and there we are. Rick, talk about the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland...
There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. I'm a big Hugh Jackson fan. I was very disappointed in Hugh. He didn't call me for scheme advice last year, so I'm mad at him. I'm not kidding, man. I'm really not. But what does Hugh do? Oh, okay. Here, let me excuse me. Let me take a time. Go back to Hugo. He cleaned up his question. It is, what do you think Quan Short leaves Carolina Panthers, and if he does, should the Raiders go after him or Campbell?
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, yeah, Kawan Short is a game changer. So if you have a chance. You know, there's very few guys out there that, you know, I would advise. Like, when you sign a free agent, you have to overpay, right? It's just the way it goes. And you take a look at Vernon Oliver last year.
Right.
Or, you know, any of these guys that hit the open market. So I think it's going to cost a lot of money to sign a guy like Kawan Short. And I find it hard. I don't know what the Panthers' cap situation is offhand. I find it hard to believe that they're going to let that man walk out the building because he's such an integral focal point of that defense. But, right. Yeah, I mean, if he walks away, for sure the Raiders should look into that. And Campbell, I'm assuming Calais Campbell, is he a free agent? I don't know if it's Calais Campbell or not.
I believe he is Calais Campbell, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, hey, there's a guy that can also get after the quarterback, and he's a lanky guy. He's got some length to him. So you pair him up opposite of Mack or Irvin, I mean, that's going to create mismatch problems all day long. But again, you take a look at what Vernon Oliver got last year, and Calais Campbell is in the same caliber level of talent. You know, I think they made Vernon Oliver the highest paid defensive end or the highest paid defensive player in all the NFL last year.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
That's the kind of money that you're looking at if you want one of those guys.
Now, my question has to do with the Browns again. Now, our favorite subject. What do you do with that first pick, which they have again?
Well, you know, again, they stockpiled all the picks last year, and now this year it's time to add players. You know, they got rid of a lot of veteran guys that were still able to contribute. You take a look at the guy, Gabriel, the wide receiver that went off to Atlanta and had an outstanding production. Yeah. Cleveland just got rid of the guy. I mean, they got rid of several veterans. That
Alex Mack, remember Mr. Mack at center? They let him run off. They didn't pay him. He wound up leading the Falcons to the Super Bowl along with the other gentleman you pointed to. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And, you know, I think it's time to start adding players. And when you're the Browns, you need everything. So, hey, best available, let's line them up and knock them out. First round pick, first overall. I know you're not a fan, but hey, let's get Myles Garrett, man. Let's get him in there first overall, and then come back at number 12.
I'm a fan of
They have
trading down. That's me.
they have some pieces on defense, some good young players, some guys who showed promise last year. They do have some corners. They have Hayden back there. They have the Penn State guy that showed some promise. They have the Oklahoma State kid there. So if they can add Garrett on defense at 12, I would come back and get a guy like Mike Williams. Let's get a playmaker because you can't win in the NFL if you can't score points. And they have no playmakers on offense. Zero, zip, zilch.
True.
You need somebody who can make plays and put points on the board. So I'd go Myles Garrett 1. I'd go Mike Williams at 12. And, I'd try to maybe consider that Jimmy Garoppolo trade. And if I'm the Browns, I'm looking ahead at next year where it's really a really rich quarterback draft class. So I'm building my team first.
Hey, I just want to pepper in this in. Citron says they got Terrell Pryor.
Yeah.
It's like just want I got to get that in there.
Is he a free agent? I think
he is. He's a free agent. Yeah. So, he's a free agent. And
so then maybe not for long, which makes the Mike Williams selection make even more sense if Pryor does leave in free agency. They have someone who can come in and fill that void. But that's probably where I would go with that.
And then Tactfulness says, why is everyone so high on Malik McDowell? I don't like him for the Raiders. So who do you recommend as a defensive tackle or middle linebacker for the Raiders in the first?
Well, I don't know that there's really going to be a demand for defensive tackle in the first round this year. So I don't know if I would use a first round pick on that. And I think, we've discussed the middle linebacker now at length, I think. So, either Hassan Reddick or Zach Cunningham in the first round at the linebacker position would be my preference. I just don't think, maybe a guy like Chris Wormley out of Michigan and you want to go late second, might be a little early for him, but if a guy like Chris Wormley from Michigan is there in the third round at defensive tackle, I would much rather use a third round pick on Wormley than a first round pick on a defensive tackle. But again, Montrevious Adams, that could be a good pick in the second round.
Yeah. Now, Paul Dog says, never trade with the Patriots. We got burned with the Moss trade. Now, hey, Ethan Schuler, I'm going to have to block you if you have one more out of context. I just got to say, okay? One more and you're done. Okay, now. And so, now, what are your thoughts on Carl Lawson, defensive end? That's, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master has the other question. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, had some injury issues. Production is through the roof. A little bit undersized. I think that he's a guy that is probably going to come in that 6 foot range. If he hits 6'1", that'll be a good thing for him. So, but when you're a 6 foot defensive lineman, you're going to be labeled as undersized, and I think that's going to hurt his draft stock. So, while the film and the production might say this guy's a first-round talent, I think he slides down into that round 2 range.
And Ethan Schuler, he's now playing, goes, what do you think, thank you, Ethan, what do you think about Samaje Perimeter?
Samaje Perine, the running back from Oklahoma.
Yes.
Big-bodied, 6 foot, 235 between the tackles back, and probably going to be one of the best bargains in this year's draft because we've talked about the depth at running back. We've rattled off over probably half a dozen names, and his name didn't even come up yet. But this guy can be a starter at the next level, and that's why you take a look at Latavius Murray. If he's going to command Lamar Miller type of money, Samaje Perine is almost the same player, and I can get him in the 4th round probably for $500,000 a year. So
And then Ethan has asked, what about Joe Mixon as well, who's not going? He's not invited to the combine.
Not invited to the combine. At the end of the day, NFL teams are about winning.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a player that can help your team win, then they will sign him up. And I do think that there is a difference here between his situation and the Ray Rice situation. Whereas the Ray Rice situation was the first of its kind. So.
Mm-hmm. Hey, can we talk about that? Can you fill people in on the Joe Mixon controversy, just so we can round that out for people who may not know?
Yeah, I mean, you go Google Joe Mixon video, it'll come up, and here's the difference. This incident was, I think, 2 years ago now, where we don't really know the details leading up to the incident are murky. Whether there was a racial slur or a homophobic slur between the lady and her friend and Joe Mixon. But you will see on the video, Joe Mixon comes into the pizzeria.
Mm-hmm.
Some words are exchanged. The girl gets in his face, and he just clocks her. Cold. Knocks her out, unconscious.
Jeez.
Breaks her jaw, breaks her face.
What? Whoa. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I knew something had happened, but I didn't know it was that.
It's disgusting.
Wow.
I honestly think he should be banned from the league if the NFL wants to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why? To me, there's some things you don't deserve a second chance.
Right.
When you punch a female in the face and shatter her jawbone,
yeah, that's it.
You don't deserve the privilege to wear the shield.
Right.
In my opinion.
You're right. You're 1,000% correct. Yeah.
It's also my opinion
Yeah.
that NFL teams like to win.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to say, hey, this happened 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
All the Oklahoma coaches vouch for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good kid.
Mm-hmm.
He deserves a second chance. And I think this is where it differentiates with Ray Rice, because Ray Rice was on the decline. He was coming off his worst season ever. This kid is coming out of college. He's a 20-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say, hey, 20-year-olds make mistakes. This was 2 years ago. He's rehabbed his image. And they're going to take the publicity hit, and he'll probably go out and win Rookie of the Year, and everybody will forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
But Dalvin Cook has some history, too.
No.
Tyreek Hill
I got to.
last year, he went in the fifth round. There was no video. So I got to believe Joe Mixon will definitely be off the board by day 2.
Now, in fairness, I have to add, Donald Richardson says she attacked him first, and then he hit her once. And my response is that doesn't matter.
Wait a second. Wait a second. She attacked him?
Well, I'm only reading what my viewers are saying.
But
listen, and I don't agree with his point of view.
You're a man.
Yeah.
Maybe or he's a man or not, but by her getting in his face, maybe she put her hands on him and gave him a little shove. It doesn't mean you break her face. Dude.
No, not at all. No, absolutely not. And that's why he shouldn't be in the NFL. I agree with you.
That's
absolutely.
A poor decision.
Yeah. No, never hit a woman. That's it. Yeah. Now, we all want to talk about my favorite quarterback other than Davis Webb, Deshaun Watson of Clemson, who I think should be the number one pick, not necessarily Cleveland Browns. And I said that in part to get a laugh out of you, Rick. I know it's late. But we're going to be wrapping up a little bit. But I want to before I close, I want to talk about Deshaun Watson, because at Bleacher Report interviewed him, and I followed up on. He says that he's always described as a dual threat quarterback, which means black quarterback, and he thinks that's a pejorative. In other words, he's being described on his race. Do you think that's going to affect him, or will he overcome all that like Jameis Winston and be drafted number 1, and Cam Newton, who was also drafted number 1 in spite of all that? Your thoughts?
I think that when Deshaun Watson is at his best, he can beat you with his arm and his feet. He's made big plays beating you with his feet, and he's taken it upon his shoulders to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more – I think his dilemma is really more similar to Michael Vick coming out of college, where he has all the tools to be a quarterback. But if you remember when Jim Mora Jr. got a hold of Mike Vick and they forced him to be this pocket passing type of quarterback.
Yeah, because Greg Knapp was the offensive coordinator. I remember that like it happened yesterday. Yep.
And statistically speaking, I think he did rather well.
Mm-hmm. He did.
I think they might have enjoyed some success.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, when I look back at Mike Vick, I feel like he was at his best when you let Mike Vick be Mike Vick.
Which brings me to a quick question. Do you think that if the read option had been in the NFL when Mike Vick came out, we would have been talking about a different story with him, maybe a couple of Super Bowl trophies over his,
I don't, because he's so tiny and small. He's like 5'10", 5'11", and not even 190 pounds. And I think that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the Teddy Bridgewater frame.
Mm-hmm.
The injuries. It was just like Mike Vick's ankles are so skinny.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I look at his bone and his structure, and that's the same concern I had with Teddy Bridgewater coming out. The guy can play quarterback, but he's always banged up. He was always injured at Louisville.
Right. Yeah.
And Deshaun Watson, I think he is capable. Pocket quarterback, dual threat quarterback. I don't think it matters, but I think here's the dilemma. Like, Mike Vick, he's at his best when you let him roam and improvise. I think Deshaun Watson can improvise. Like, he doesn't have to be in the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can make those.
He's almost like Aaron Rodgers in a way.
Right. He can make the rare cross-field throws.
Right.
Buy time in the pocket, move around. Yeah, he could pick up the first down if he has to. Now, here's the dilemma, right? That's when he's at his best, just like Mike Vick. Now, when you let him be Mike Vick or you let him be Deshaun Watson, that's going to increase the hits that he takes.
Yeah.
And the more hits a quarterback takes, the more concerned I am as an NFL GM, as an NFL head coach. It becomes a numbers game. It's like a hit count. There should be a hit count.
Right, like a pitch count in baseball.
Quarterback.
Right.
Because, when your quarterback keeps getting hit, it's only a matter of time before he gets injured. So, it's tough for me what I would do with Deshaun Watson because, like, I don't want to put him in a box and say, yeah, you're just going to be a pocket quarterback passer at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
No, I want you to improvise. I want you to move around and buy time in the pocket and do everything that you've done. But at the same time, it makes me really nervous because I think he will be susceptible to taking a lot of hits over the course of a 16-game season, 20 games if you make the playoffs maybe. I think that's the catch-22 dilemma. Like, so I would compare him more to, and I don't think he is the running type of threat like Michael Vick, but I would compare his situation to like kind of what Atlanta had. They didn't know what to do with him.
No,
like,
they didn't.
Do we make him a pocket passer? Do we just let him do what he does, and that's when he's at his best? And that also risks injury. So aside from that, when you talk about short to intermediate, very good. When you go mid-range to long ball, I like to see more accuracy, more consistency, and maybe that's where at the combine he could kind of solidify some of those doubts.
Yeah. Now, Ethan has a question. We're going to take two more questions after this one, and then we're going to let you go to bed. Do you think Baker Mayfield will go to the NFL next year? That is Ethan Sugar's question.
I think he will. I do believe so. And, Josh Rosen from UCLA will be a hot commodity. Sam Darnold now from USC has suddenly catapulted into the QB mix. And, Mayfield is another guy that people feel like could be a potential first-round quarterback. So it's going to be a very, very intriguing quarterback class to look forward to next year. And I think there's some franchise quarterbacks in next year's draft, which, going back to your Browns question, is why I would build the team this year and try to add my quarterback.
I'm gonna say, man, if you take your Miles Jarrett, I'm gonna deliberately draft Cam, and I'm gonna have a special offense. I'm gonna say, hey, look, I want you to go wherever Miles goes. If Miles is on the left, you go over there. We'll run to your side. We'll turn him out and we'll run an off tackle play, read option.
Well,
We're gonna pancake him. Hey Rick, we're gonna pancake him.
Offense, and then we could have the Cam Cannon offense. Just
You got
Cannon,
Now the other one is Donald Richardson says that, and I have to agree with this observation, that Deshaun Watson is a young Steve Young and will be just as good. I think there is that possibility. But the other one I have is
Steve Young was highly accurate.
Yes, that's true. That's quite true. Now tell them how they can find you. You're at NFLDraftBible.com, right?
NFLDraftBible.com, you got it. We're all over social media. We do a pretty good job of putting everything we do on the Twitterverse at NFL Draft Bible. We've been tweet blasting and promoting this show. So
thank you. This is a good one.
We're just on location across the nation. We'll be out at the NFL Scouting Combine next week. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to link up.
Yeah.
And then after the Combine, like I said, it's the Pro Day circuit. I'll be on the road every day in March. I'm hitting about 15 to 20 Pro Days in the month of March. And then we will be down in Philadelphia, back on the East Coast for this year's NFL Draft. And during the off season, we cover all kinds of red carpet events, football camps, training camps. So we'll be at the Maxwell Award Club March the 10th. We will do the Rutgers Pro Day during the day. We will do the Maxwell Club Awards in the evening. Matt Ryan, Jack Del Rio, Lamar Jackson, Nick Saban, some of the people being honored there. Of course, Ron Jaworski is conducting the event, and it's always a can't stop, won't stop kind of mood.
That's right.
Here at the NFL
Hey, I got another
Draft
question for you. Tony Romo, what do you think the Dallas Cowboys will do and should do?
Well, they should find any trade partner that they possibly can find willing right now, because when you have a player that everybody knows you don't want or is not going to be on your team next year, nobody's really willing to give up much of anything. And there's a feeling that Tony Romo will ultimately get cut, which, if there's any truth to this Redskins rumor that Cousins could go to San Fran, that would suddenly make Tony Romo a hot commodity and highly wanted by Washington, where they would be willing to give up compensation rather than wait for him to hit the free agent market. And then it's, all hands on deck. The Denver Broncos might have an interest. The Chicago Bears might have an interest. The New York Jets might have an interest. So I think that the Dallas Cowboys should immediately find a trade partner. Whoever's willing, take whatever you can get, because if you don't take what you can get now, you're going to ultimately wind up releasing that player and get nothing in return.
Oh, Ethan asked a good question. What about Lamar Jackson?
I saw him in person. I think he's a hell of a college football player. I think he has a lot of work to do to become an NFL quarterback. And when I stood next to him, I'm not even sure he's 6 feet tall. He's pushing 6 feet tall. So we'll see what he measures in, but hell of a playmaker at the collegiate level, just like Tim Tebow. I'm not sure if he's an NFL quarterback yet.
Oh, by the way, Paul Dog says you should drink all that water behind you.
Hey, Defiance Fuel Water, baby.
There you go. Hey,
Defiance
Fuel. Where can we get that?
DefianceFuel.com.
Yeah.
We will be in Suite 203 at the JW Marriott in Indianapolis for the entire week of the NFL Scouting Combine. It will be myself, the NFL Draft Bible, Parabolic Performance and Rehab, Defiance Fuel Water, and the College Gridiron Showcase will all be in Suite 203 at the JW Marriott. So shout out to DefianceFuel.com. They definitely have been a big supporter of the NFL Draft Bible, and we thank them for that.
Oh, hey, by the way, Donald Richardson asked. He says, Did you guys talk about Mike Williams?" Yes, we did. But can you talk about Mike Williams for just a few seconds before we close out?
Playmaker, in one word, but size, speed, physicality, route running. I think he checks off all the boxes, and when he goes to Indianapolis next week, he will pretty much seal the deal for being the consensus number one wide receiver. And in my opinion, the only true, clear-cut, can Corey Davis be a number one? Sure. Could Chad Henson be a number one? Maybe. Will Mike Williams be a number one? I certainly believe so.
There you go. He is Ric Serritella of NFLDraftBible.com and your new publication as well. And hopefully I'll be able to get to the Combine and meet with you next week. But in either case, we will talk next week. Hey, you think we can do one more of these before the Combine? Or
I'd love to do one. I mean, hey, we'll talk more off the air. Why not do one of these bad boys once a week leading up to the draft?
Sounds good. That sounds like a plan to me. I love it. Absolutely. Donald Richardson says, good show.
Late night fun.
I know. I say great show. Donald Richardson says, great show. Thank you very much, Rick. Thank you, man.
I appreciate it.
And I want to say thank you, everybody, for coming out and watching my friend Rick here. He did a great show, and thank you. And Raider Scully.
Because I have nothing but love for you, and
back at you, man. Thank you.
I've known you for quite some time now, and people need to know you are an NFL draft pioneer and innovator. We did the first live stream podcast from inside the NFL draft.
Yes, we did.
They tried to bar us from the draft.
Yes.
We did. That was about 12 years ago.
That's right. That was 2007. We brought Ustream to the NFL draft, and you were on the show.
We brought Ustream,
which is still up.
Video stream from inside the NFL draft. It had never been done before, and the NFL didn't know what it was, how to act, how to handle it, and they tried to bar us from the draft.
Yep.
And we said, no. That's
right.
But, you've been an early adapter with all things technology.
Thank you.
And I think that's a big credit to you and the success that you've had. And people who don't adapt to the technology get left in the dust. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love being friends and following everything that you do in your journey in life and your journey in business.
Oh, thank you.
It's been an honor and a privilege.
Oh, I'm going to cry. Thank you. No, you've been a great friend to me. And, thank you for hanging in over the years. You know what I'm talking about. And, it's, great to have a brother and brethren in this and someone who enjoys this as much as I do. And you guys are a lot of fun just to be with and hang out with your family. You're all a family, so you definitely.
And the only problem this year is no deep dish. We're going to have to go Philly cheesesteaks this year.
You know what? I've never had an authentic Philly cheesesteak sandwich in Philly.
Well, Samantha's from Philly, so we're in for a treat.
I'm looking forward to it, man. I am. Hey, man, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon. You got it.
Rock on, baby.
You got it. Peace out.